A woman sits alone at a candlelit table in the French countryside, telling the waiter to bring the most expensive bottle on the menu. She's not celebrating. An hour away, a man keeps refreshing his phone, waiting for a woman who is never going to show up. He thinks this is his birthday surprise. He has no idea it's the beginning of his punishment. By the end of today, he's going to understand exactly what it feels like when someone plays with your feelings, because that's what he did to a 14-year-old boy once, and he laughed about it. If you've ever watched someone's mask slip, watch them reveal, in one careless, drunken moment, exactly who they really are underneath the charm. You know that feeling in your stomach. This is a story about that moment, and about a woman who didn't scream, didn't cry, and didn't forgive. She waited. She smiled. And then she served a payback so quiet and so precise that the person on the other end never saw it coming until it was already over. Stick around, because this one earns its ending. And if you love watching karma clock in for its shift, hit subscribe before we start. Camille was 26 when she met Thomas. 28 years old, sharp-dressed, quick with a joke. The kind of man who remembered how you took your coffee after asking you once. He was educated, good-looking, easy to talk to. The kind of promising that makes you start rearranging your future around someone before you've even said the word boyfriend out loud. 7 weeks in, he invited her away for his 29th birthday, a long weekend at his father's countryside house in a small French village, just his two childhood best friends, Alex and Bart, his father Etienne, and her. She packed her bag with the particular giddiness of someone falling for a person faster than she'd meant to. This was the meet the family weekend. This was supposed to matter, and some quiet, hopeful part of her had already decided it would. And at first it did. Friday was golden. Long lunches in the garden, a walk through the vineyard rows with the light going amber behind them, Etienne pouring wine, and telling stories about Thomas as a boy that made Camille laugh until her ribs hurt. Etienne had a warmth that put her instantly at ease, the kind of father who asked real questions and actually listened to the answers, who made her feel, within a single afternoon, like she might belong here. By the time she went to bed that night, she was already imagining what it would feel like to be folded into this family for good. She had no idea what Saturday night was going to cost her. Saturday brought a garden party. Neighbors, old friends of Thomas's, string lights strung between the trees. Too much rose passed around too fast. As the night wore on and the crowd thinned toward the edges, a small group drifted toward a fire pit at the bottom of the garden, and the conversation did what drunk, nostalgic conversation always does eventually. It turned to childhood. At first, it was harmless. A stolen bicycle. A science fair explosion. The kind of stories that make everyone laugh and nobody wince. Then Thomas grinned at Bart across the flames and said, "Tell them about Arthur." Camille felt the air change before she understood why. It was something in the tone, a smugness under the laughter, like they were about to hand each other a trophy. What followed made her stomach drop in slow motion. When they were 14, 15, Thomas, Bart, and Alex had picked out a boy from their school, quiet, shy, easy to isolate, and spent nearly 6 months tormenting him. It started as mockery, rumors, the ordinary cruelty of teenage boys with too much time and no consequences. But it didn't stay ordinary. At some point it turned into something colder and more deliberate. They built a fake identity online, a girl who didn't exist, and used her to make Arthur believe someone finally liked him. For months, they let him fall for a person who was never real. They read his messages back to each other like a comedy bit. And when they got bored of the joke, they ended it the way you'd end a prank, not a person's life. A fake meeting point he was told to travel hours to reach, alone, in a shirt they'd picked out as a private joke, waiting for someone who was never coming. By the next morning at school, the whole thing had been laid bare for everyone to laugh at before Arthur even understood what had happened to him. Thomas didn't tell this story with an ounce of shame. He told it with a grin, and topped it off with an offhand joke about how they should have pushed it further. Bart laughed so hard, he nearly spilled his drink. Alex just shrugged, like it was any other campfire tale, like the boy on the other end of it had been a character in a movie and not an actual person who'd had to leave his own school. Camille sat very still. Her wine glass suddenly felt too heavy to hold. Her pulse was loud in her own ears, and underneath it, one thought kept repeating on a loop. These men have never once, not for a single second, felt sorry. She glanced sideways at Etienne. His face had gone pale, his jaw tight, his eyes fixed on his son with a kind of devastation he wasn't even trying to hide anymore. He'd caught the tail end of it. That had been enough. Neither of them said a word to each other. Camille stood up, mumbled something about being tired, and walked back to the house alone, her hands shaking the entire way up the gravel path.
She didn't sleep.
She lay in the dark for hours, replaying it. The grin, the laugh, the casual, practiced cruelty of it, like it was a well-worn party trick they'd performed 100 times before. Around 4 a.m, she heard Thomas stumble in and collapse into bed beside her, oblivious, still smelling like campfire smoke and wine. She kept her eyes shut and her breathing even. She was done pretending to be asleep in more ways than one. By the time the light started coming up gray through the curtains, Camille had a plan. Not a scene, not tears, not a shouting match in front of his father's house. Something colder and far more fitting for a person who'd spent an entire evening laughing about making someone else believe in a love that was never real. Sunday was Thomas's actual birthday. The plan, as it had existed a day earlier, was simple and sweet. A private lunch date, just the two of them, before the group reunited in the afternoon for cake and more wine. Camille let him keep exactly half of that plan. She left before he woke, bag already packed, and caught the first train back toward Paris. From the platform, phone in hand, she sent one text. Happy birthday. Meet me here for your surprise. I need a head start to get everything ready. She picked the coordinates almost at random off a map. It didn't matter where. It only mattered that he'd go, and go willingly, the way people do when they still believe they're loved. He read it at 10 and replied within a minute, thrilled, promising to follow her instructions to the letter. That was the moment Camille came as close to laughing as she had in 12 hours. Good, she thought. Follow them exactly. At noon, he reached the first location. She told him to wait. A small delay, nothing to worry about. At 1:15, she redirected him to a restaurant 30 minutes away by car, told him she was close behind, that he'd understand everything the second he saw her, and that he should go ahead and order the most expensive bottle on the menu while he waited. He did that too. Of course he did. He had no reason yet not to trust her. 1:30 came and went. Then the first missed call. Then another. Then a string of texts, each one a little more anxious than the last, each one asking if everything was okay. Camille watched the notifications arrive on her screen from 100 kilometers away and felt nothing but a strange, steady calm. The particular calm that only shows up after a decision has already been made and there's nothing left to decide. At 2:15, after 45 minutes of silence on her end, she finally answered. Not with a call, with a single line, sent in French, the same language he'd used to laugh about Arthur less than 24 hours earlier. So, how does it feel if people play with your feelings? Then she went quiet again. For good. Picture him at that table for a second. An open bottle of wine he can no longer bring himself to enjoy. A reservation for 2 with only 1 chair filled. A phone that has gone completely, permanently silent after buzzing nonstop for an hour. And somewhere in the middle of that restaurant, in front of strangers who have no idea why this well-dressed man's face has just drained of all its color, the realization creeping in, slow and humiliating, this isn't a delay. This was never going to end with her walking through that door. Not long after, an unknown number lit up Camille's phone. It was Alex, panicked, demanding to know what she'd done, insisting that Thomas's birthday was completely ruined because of her, that she'd gone way too far. Camille didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. This is an extremely small payback for what you did to Arthur, she said. Tell Thomas to stop calling me. Then she hung up and blocked every single one of them. Thomas, Alex, Bart, gone in 3 quick taps. No shouting. No tears. Just a door closing, quietly and permanently, on a man who had never once thought to close a door on his own cruelty. She still felt sick about it that evening, if she was honest with herself, Some part of her had genuinely started falling for him, and that part didn't just switch off because the rest of her knew better. A mutual friend called a few days later to tell her she'd overreacted, that it wasn't her place to punish a grown man for something he'd done as a teenager, that boys say cruel things and grow out of them. Maybe some do. Camille wasn't willing to bet Arthur's 6 months of hell on it. Thomas texted for weeks afterward, then months, apologizing, explaining, asking for one more chance. She never answered a single one. The only person who never tried to talk her out of any of it was Etienne. He hadn't slept that Saturday night either. He called her not long after, ostensibly about something unrelated, and quietly told her he understood exactly why she'd left, that he was disappointed in his son in a way he didn't know how to say out loud, and that he genuinely liked having her around. He never tried to get her back together with Thomas. He just let her know she'd done nothing wrong. Camille still doesn't know what happened to Arthur. She never learned his last name, and some part of her has always been afraid that reaching out, even years later, would just be dragging him back through something he'd finally managed to leave behind. But she thinks about him sometimes, hopes he's out there somewhere, 35 or 36 now, doing fine, having long since stopped waiting for a bus that was never going to bring him anywhere good. If this story left you with that particular kind of satisfaction, quiet, sharp, and completely deserved, smash that like button and tell us in the comments. Have you ever watched someone's mask slip and known, instantly, that you were done? Subscribe for more stories exactly like this one, because karma always finds its table eventually.